Senator Cameron.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Kell. I want to come back to the CBA and the Newen issue. Can you explain to me, in as short a possible time as you can, why you have not issued a regulatory guide for financial planners instead of simply issuing enforceable undertakings on the Commonwealth Bank? Surely this is an issue that banks, financial planners and banks and institutions around the country should be aware of.
Maybe I'm not quite understanding the question, Senator, but we do have a range of regulatory guides that relate directly to standards in the financial planning industry that derive ultimately from the legislation we administer. So the new Future of Financial Advice reforms will set out a framework around conflicted remuneration and what types of conflicted remuneration are prohibited. Need to put the client's interests first, the best interest duty, and other requirements about providing appropriate advice and about belonging to an alternative dispute resolution scheme, about having professional indemnity insurance, about having appropriate training and qualifications. And in most of those areas, we have regulatory guides that set out how we're going to apply those requirements in the financial planning area more directly. In any case where we take enforcement action, as we did in relation to Commonwealth financial planning, we will often reference the sorts of standards that we've set out in those guides.
Did you do that in the Commonwealth Bank Newen situation?
Well, it was evident to us that the standards there were considerably below what was required, which was why we obtained a court enforceable undertaking and banned 7 different advisors from the industry, and obtained compensation for several hundred clients. So one of the issues that we seek to do in any of these sorts of matters, Senator, is as far as possible publicise what we've done. Send a message to the rest of the industry, convey that there are serious consequences. In this instance, for example, the entire leadership of that organisation changed as a result, and send a message to the rest of the industry as well as to consumers.
But Mr. Kell, look, you don't seem to take a breath when you're asked a question, and it really is quite annoying, I must say. You can answer these questions much quicker. I'm not telling you how to answer the questions, but I watched your responses to Senator Williams. Please don't do that to me. I just want you. This is a very serious issue for ASIC. It's a serious issue for the government, and all the senators are concerned about it. So just don't take me on a waltz around the merry-go-round.
Senator, can I just say that trying to explain the regulation of the financial planning industry, which you've asked, and regulatory guides, take it
on notice then. Yes. Take that on notice, and can you also take on notice whether you need to change the regulatory guide for financial planners as a result of the Newen case, and can you also advise me, maybe you can advise me now, but if you can't, you can take it on notice, whether the regulatory guide for financial planners was in place when Mr. Newen perpetrated these breaches?
So you want me to take that on notice?
If you can say yes or no, that would be easy.
There are and were an extensive legal infrastructure in place when Mr. Newen and the other Commonwealth financial planning representatives that we took action against engaged in that conduct, and that was the basis upon which we took
And what I'm asking you, was there a regulatory guide in place?
And there were various regulatory guides that went to a whole range of issues.
So take this on notice. If the regulatory guides were in place, can you advise why those regulatory guides failed in the case of CBA and when? Take that on notice. Now, can you also advise whether when ASIC were advised of the problems in the CBA on October the 30th, 2008, and the time that Mr. Nguyen resigned in July 6th, 2009. Do you have any estimate of the financial losses to clients of Mr. Nguyen through that period?
I do not have an estimate.
Can you take that on notice, and can you advise the Senate of the losses that took place between when you were advised in October 2008 and when finally Mr. Nguyen resigned in July 6, 2009? If you could take that on notice, that's an important issue for the Senate. Can you also advise on notice what the problems were with the CBA procedures when in 2008 Mr. Nguyen was investigated by CBA? What were the weaknesses in the CBA procedures in that investigation, and why after that investigation on October the 15th, 2008, the Commonwealth Bank actually promoted him to a senior planner after these issues had been raised? I just can't understand why that would happen, and if there is a reason why it would happen, I think the regulator's entitled to know, and you should advise us as to why that weakness is in the Commonwealth Bank's processes. Can you also advise why Mr. Nguyen was allowed to resign on July 6th, citing illness, when it was clear that that was not the case? And what are the implications for this if financial planners can resign, saying on the basis of illness when they have been engaged in illegal activities, and can then walk away to another financial planning agency? What checks and balances can you ensure that banks and financial planners and financial organisations put in place to stop this happening in the future? So if you take that on notice. Can you also take on notice why you are saying that you've done, in the colloquial, this is not what you said, but you basically indicated to Senator Williams that you'd done a good job, that you had, resolved this issue. And so why then do you see as simply returning some financial losses to individuals when they were suffering humiliation, depression? One client had a stent put in his heart and had psoriasis. There are these other areas of loss to an individual. So is it simply your position, and is the legislation limited to you getting financial recompense, but there is nothing for pain and suffering? So if you can take that on notice, if you can advise us if that's a weakness in the legislative process that the government should take a look at, because I just don't think that trying to wrestle... well, just let me ask the question. Is it appropriate for the Commonwealth Bank or any agency, when they know that their officer has acted illegally, to first of all offer a pittance to resolve the loss for the individuals, and then progressively up the offer, and put these individuals through, more stress? Why does that seem to be a culture or a process in financial organisations, and what can ASIC do to resolve that? So you take that on notice. If you could also take on notice the issue of your submissions to the where does this go to, the AAT, and I want to quote in the Sydney Morning Herald, the tribunal member, Gary Ettinger, is quoted in the Herald, and he says, "I am mindful that there is no allegation that Mr. Nguyen engaged in dishonest conduct. Why did ASIC not make a submission to the tribunal of dishonest conduct against this individual?" If you take that on notice, that's a very serious issue in my view that we need an answer on. And why, and can you outline on notice why ASIC put a penalty of 7 years on an individual who, on the basis of what I've read here, and what you must know more about it, was engaging in illegal activity? Why should this individual be free to act as a financial planner in 7 years' time? So if you take that on notice and give us the details and the arguments that you went through to deliver a 7-year ban, and why you didn't seek a ban for life on this individual who was destroying the lives of ordinary Australian citizens. So if you take that on notice, are you winding me up?
Yeah, I am.
Okay, and I might put more questions on notice in writing to you.
Thank you, Senator Cameron.